Alfonse, what's the relationship between art and religious belief?
Well, at least from a Christian point of view, there's an incarnational aspect that somehow the belief needs to be represented in some kind of form. It's not just a theoretical abstraction, even though my painting actually does use abstraction, but to give it some kind of physical form. I always, if I could tell you a little story, my daughter, when she was small, I took her to the church, and with her early, and she said, Dad, I love the windows. She was looking at the stained glass, and then she says, I love the smell. And she goes, I love the music. And I love the painting. And then she said, I just hate coming. And the point is like, I was very happy with that, because her senses were already sort of hooked with, the sacred. It took some kind of physical form. And it was up to her life, years later, whether she wanted to accept their beliefs or not. But just a sense of engaging in the physicality of belief. I mean, as we love takes some form. We give flowers, we put a ring on, we commemorate things. So I think faith needs a sort of physical forms, physicality. So it's something tangible.
Some would say that diminishes faith, because then you're sort of externalizing the belief or the faith, and you undermine the concept of faith, which is belief without evidence or something. And now if you give it the physicality,
well, I always go back to Caravaggio's painting of St. Thomas the Doubter, because Thomas wants evidence of faith, and the resurrected Christ takes, put your finger in my wound. Like, there's nothing wrong with evidence. I mean, obviously, evidence ain't going to produce the ultimate faith, which is sort of this ultimate trust and visibility. But we need these sort of helpful physicality.
In looking at the use of physicality to mediate between art and belief, there are at least two different parts of this. One is triggering it to begin with, which happens in some cases. Your daughter's example is a potential one. The other is sustaining belief, and what people believe, and that the artistic expressions sustain that belief by causing some sort of an emotional attachment. Or is that valid?
Yeah. I'm not sure I understand the question specifically, but what comes to mind is this idea of sort of via negativa, via positiva. Is like some people find faith in taking away, and other people find faith in adding positive elements. And to me, the big factor in this religious faith conversation, which goes against the American strain of individualism, is the idea of community. So it's a shared experience, a shared communication.
And art facilitates that.
I think so.
Well, music would seem to be the classic way that happens.
Well, I'm always jealous of music because it sort of made the crossover. Contemporary art is having a hard time because this whole idea of modernism and the different art forms. Most people, faith traditions, have a more traditional
representation.
Yeah.
So you have a very modernistic form in your art, and it's not instantly obvious that there's the images are religious.
It's funny because part of me thinks I'm like a 14th century guy. Yeah. It's holding the tension between the two. I think that's where creativity really happens, is holding that tension between the forces of sort of medieval art and contemporary art and indigenous type art, and I like that dialogue, and that's why I try to communicate to people is I'm having a dialogue with the past, and for you to sort of take part in it, you need to know something with your own tradition and past, and because you can feed me as well. It's not just one way.
It's different. Your work is different than to engage people's belief by your work. Takes more of a cognitive process than if it was just simple beauty. that people would, in a very simplistic way, see a representational beauty and therefore have the belief. You're
Yeah.
forcing people to do more than just see a beautiful form, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to engage them. I was telling someone earlier at the conference is I might have a representation of a Madonna and Child, but there might be a Martha Rothko type background.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps me painting. It'd be easier to do strictly abstract art or religious art, but I try to combine the two. And recently, I've come to the conclusion that I'm doing this more for myself than other people, because it keeps me connected to my own faith and my own wonder. And I love to share it in the public space, but it might be a little self-centered.